The late afternoon sun dipped low across the park, spreading warm light over the pond where ducks floated lazily. A faint breeze rustled the leaves of the oak trees, carrying with it the smell of freshly cut grass. It was one of those rare summer evenings when time seemed to slow down. Most families had already started heading home for dinner. The playground was quieter now, just a few children clambering on the slides and swings, their laughter echoing faintly. On a bench near the pond, Elena Ramirez sat with her baby boy nestled in her arms. Lucas, only 8 months old, had been fussy all afternoon, but now he lay against her chest, his little hand clutching her blouse. His lashes fluttered as if he was fighting sleep. Elena, brushing a stray curl from her face, shifted him gently and began to sing. It wasn't a grand performance, her voice wasn't trained, and exhaustion often left it husky. But her lullaby carried a kind of beauty that came from the heart. It was a Spanish song her mother had sung to her when she was little, a song about stars guiding lost souls home. Her mother had passed away 2 years earlier, and singing it always made her feel close to her again. The song floated softly through the air, lilting and tender. Lucas's breathing slowed. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, letting the melody soothe her as much as it soothed him. Life hadn't been easy for Elena. At 26, she had already weathered more storms than many did in a lifetime. She had fallen in love young, certain she had found someone who would stand by her side. But her partner had left as soon as responsibility loomed. She hadn't heard from him since the day she told him she was pregnant. The pregnancy had been hard. She worked nights as a waitress at a small diner to save money, her swollen feet aching, often collapsing into bed with barely enough energy to study for her community college courses. Her dream of becoming a nurse sometimes felt impossibly far away. Still, she pushed on, for Lucas. He was her anchor, her reason. But even strong women had their moments of weakness. Some days, the loneliness was overwhelming. She watched couples walking hand in hand through the park, families laughing together, and felt the ache of what she didn't have. She'd grown used to swallowing her pain, hiding it behind a smile. Yet, when she sang, all of that pain poured out, woven into every note. Unbeknownst to her, someone was listening. A few yards away, sitting beneath the heavy branches of an oak tree, a man sat alone. His polished shoes stood out against the gravel path. His tailored charcoal gray suit didn't belong in the park, nor did the gleaming watch on his wrist. Damien Hale had come here to escape. At 39, Damien was known as one of the most successful businessmen in the city. He was a billionaire, founder and CEO of a technology empire that touched nearly every household in the country. To the outside world, he was enviable, powerful, wealthy, and constantly in the headlines. Yet, in truth, he was a man suffocating in silence. Damien had grown up in a cold house, the kind where chandeliers sparkled above dinner tables yet conversations were brittle and brief. His parents, consumed by social ambitions, had little time for affection. Love was something measured in achievements, not tenderness. He had learned to bury his feelings deep, presenting a flawless image to the world while inside he carried an aching emptiness. Relationships had come and gone, but most women had been more captivated by his wealth than his heart. He gave generously, bought gifts, funded dreams, but none had stayed for him. And so he learned to stop expecting love at all. He poured himself into his company instead, working endless hours, filling his life with meetings, numbers, and the hum of machines, anything to avoid the silence of his penthouse at night. But silence had a way of finding him anyway. That afternoon, after another board meeting that felt more like a battlefield than a discussion, Damien had walked out of his office with no destination in mind. His driver had asked where to go, but Damien had told him to just stop at the park. He didn't know why, perhaps because he remembered being taken here as a boy once, though the memory was hazy. Now, sitting under the oak, he scrolled idly through his phone, his mind numb. That was when he heard it. At first, it was faint, a melody carried by the wind. He thought it was a radio from somewhere nearby. But when he looked up, he saw her. The young woman on the bench with a baby in her arms. Singing. Her voice wasn't polished, yet it pierced through the haze in his mind like sunlight breaking through clouds. The melody was both tender and sorrowful, filled with something he couldn't name. It was the sound of love, of longing, of sacrifice. Before he knew it, his phone slipped from his hand onto the grass. His throat tightened. The notes of the lullaby wrapped around him, reaching into places he had locked away for decades. And then, to his surprise, his vision blurred. A single tear slid down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly, embarrassed, but more followed. Damien Hale, a man whose name was synonymous with power, who hadn't shed a tear at his father's funeral, who had weathered betrayal, loneliness, and scandal without breaking, was sitting in a public park, crying. It was absurd, and yet it was undeniable. The song carried him back to his childhood. He remembered lying awake in his cavernous bedroom, listening to the echo of footsteps of nannies who never lingered. He remembered the birthday parties filled with dozens of guests yet not a single genuine hug from his parents. He remembered wishing, just once, that someone would hold him close and sing to him. And now, decades later, hearing this stranger sing to her baby felt like hearing the echo of everything he had ever longed for but never received. Elena finished the lullaby softly, pressing a kiss to Lucas's forehead. For a moment, there was peace, her son asleep, her own heart eased by the music. When she opened her eyes, she noticed the man across the park. He was turned slightly away, but she saw the sheen of tears on his face before he quickly wiped them with the back of his hand. His posture was hunched, his expression raw, and she realized he had been listening. A flicker of unease passed through her. She wasn't used to being noticed, especially by men who looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. But there was something in his eyes, something unguarded, that softened her wariness. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other across the space between them. Neither spoke. The only sound was the faint ripple of water in the pond and the distant squeak of swings. Elena shifted, adjusting Lucas against her, unsure whether to break the silence or look away. The man seemed lost, as if caught between past and present. Damien, on his part, felt exposed. He wanted to stand, to walk away before she realized he had been crying. Yet his feet wouldn't move. His heart, usually so carefully shielded, was pulling him toward her. Something about the sight of this young mother, sitting alone but pouring so much love into her child, cracked open the emptiness inside him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a billionaire or a CEO. He felt like a man, simply a man, aching for something real. The lullaby still echoed in his ears, and as he wiped the last of his tears, Damien realized something had shifted inside him. He didn't know what it meant yet. All he knew was that he couldn't just walk away. The park was quieting down as evening approached. Families packed up picnic blankets, children tugged at their parents' hands, and the sun stretched long golden rays across the pond. On a weathered bench near the water sat Elena Ramirez, holding her baby boy in her arms. Lucas, only 8 months old, nestled against her chest, his small fist gripping her blouse as if afraid to let go. His cheeks were flushed from fussing earlier, but now he lay calm, soothed by his mother's touch. Elena shifted him gently and began to sing. It was a Spanish lullaby her late mother had passed down, one she'd sung countless times during sleepless nights. Her voice wasn't trained, but it carried warmth, woven with both love and sorrow. She sang not just for Lucas, but for herself, to ease the heaviness of exhaustion and loneliness that never seemed to leave her. At 26, Elena had already endured more than most. Her partner had walked out before Lucas was born, leaving her to juggle waitressing shifts and community college classes. She lived paycheck to paycheck, always calculating, always worrying. Yet despite the struggles, her baby gave her purpose. When she sang, the world's weight lifted, if only for a few moments. A few yards away, beneath the sprawling branches of an oak tree, Damien Hale sat on a bench of his own. He looked strikingly out of place, a man in an immaculate suit, his shoes polished, his watch gleaming, the kind of person people recognized from magazine covers. Billionaire, CEO, innovator. But right now, none of that mattered. He had come to the park seeking escape after another endless day of meetings, decisions, and a gnawing emptiness that no amount of wealth could fill. His life, for all its grandeur, was unbearably lonely. He had grown up in a mansion but without affection, his parents more interested in prestige than presence. Relationships, when they came, always seemed to orbit around his bank account rather than his heart. Damien had grown accustomed to burying his feelings, locking them away behind work and control. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried. Not when his father died, not during the collapse of his last relationship, not even during nights when silence in his penthouse felt suffocating. But then he heard her voice. The lullaby floated across the park, delicate yet powerful in its simplicity. He looked up, his gaze falling on the young woman holding her child, eyes closed as she sang. Something about the sight, her tenderness, the purity of the moment, hit him like a blow to the chest. And then it happened. His vision blurred, his throat tightened, and tears slipped down his face. Damien Hale, a man the world envied, sat in a public park crying quietly to a stranger's song. The melody awakened memories he thought long buried, nights as a boy wishing someone would sit by his bed, sing to him, tell him he mattered. The longing he had carried for so long, buried under layers of success and wealth, rose sharply to the surface. Elena, finishing the song, opened her eyes. She noticed him then, a man across the way, shoulders hunched, wiping at his face. Their gazes met for a brief moment. She felt a flicker of curiosity, even concern. Who was this stranger, so polished yet so vulnerable? Neither of them spoke, but in that silence, something shifted. For the first time in years, Damien didn't want to turn away from someone. He wanted to walk toward her. Part 2. Damien hesitated before rising. His life was built on control, on keeping emotions hidden, yet here he was trembling slightly as he approached the young mother. "Excuse me," he said softly, his deep voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. Elena looked up, adjusting Lucas who stirred faintly in her arms. Up close, she could see his suit was expensive, but his expression wasn't one of arrogance. He looked lost. "I'm sorry," Damien continued quickly, almost awkwardly. "I didn't mean to intrude. You're singing." He paused, searching for the right words. "It was beautiful." Elena blinked, surprised. Compliments from strangers were rare, especially ones that sounded genuine. "Thank you," she said quietly. "It's just a lullaby." For him, she nodded toward Lucas, whose tiny chest rose and fell in sleep. Damien's gaze softened as he looked at the baby. "He's lucky," he murmured. The comment caught her off guard. She let out a small laugh, not bitter, just weary. "Lucky? I'm not so sure about that. It's just me and him. I'm trying, but," she trailed off, embarrassed by her own honesty. Damien felt something stir inside him. Here was a woman who had so little, yet gave everything she had. It was the kind of love he had always longed for, and in that moment, he envied the sleeping child in her arms. "You're doing more than you think," he said quietly. "When you sang, he stopped, unsure how much to reveal. "I remembered what it was like to wish for something like that." Elena studied him more closely now. His eyes, though tired, held sincerity. She wondered who he was, this man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms, not park benches. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. The question nearly undid him. No one asked him that, not his colleagues, not the people who courted his favor, not even the women he dated. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. Then, with an honesty that surprised him, he said, "Not really." Elena didn't press, though curiosity flickered in her. Instead, she shifted Lucas and patted the bench beside her. "Sit, if you want." Damien hesitated, then slowly lowered himself onto the bench. For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of unspoken stories between them. He introduced himself simply as Damien, omitting his last name. She told him her name was Elena. They talked quietly, about Lucas, about how hard it was raising a baby alone, about little things like the ducks in the pond. Damien listened more intently than he had listened to anyone in years. And though they came from worlds that couldn't be more different, something connected them in that quiet space. When Elena finally stood to leave, Lucas stirring awake, Damien felt a pang he couldn't explain. "Will you be here again?" he asked carefully. She hesitated, then nodded. "We come most evenings. He likes the park." He gave a small smile, the first genuine one in a long time. "Then maybe I'll see you again." As Elena walked away, Damien sat back, the echo of her lullaby still lingering. For the first time in years, the emptiness inside him didn't feel quite so vast.